What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Joystick Show, a podcast where three friends from high school in Hawaii get together to chat about video games, comics, and pop culture. I'm Thomas, and I'm here with Drake.
What up?
And today we have a very special guest. We have Brian Lambert, who is a author, editor, publisher of Wingless Comics and Wingless Entertainment. I think you're a part of that too, right? Brian, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. And yeah, Wingless Entertainment is the I guess that's the umbrella. Like Wingless Comics is our main functioning piece right now, man. But we started as like a and we still are a multimedia entertainment company. So looking forward to seeing some animation and some cartoons and some other stuff real soon.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, I feel like I would just watch Parks and Rec. So what was going through my head was like, entertainment 720 will go around the world twice for you. You know what I mean? But like,
right.
I was thinking your first sponsorship should be Red Bull.
Right.
Oh.
Right. Either that or like Bang
Red Bull
or something, right?
gives you wings for Wingless Comics.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think I'm gonna do the. I just saw him do the. What was that? Like the stock car that they do. You know, little, like the little downhill little racer.
Oh
Yes.
The
Challenge.
go-kart.
Like I need to enter 1 year, right? Like the go-kart thing. I need to do that 1 year.
That'd be sick,
fly.
yeah.
I think.
That
Right?
would
Definitely
be,
bring a helmet.
that'd be tight. Yeah, definitely. You have to have like, it got to be shaped like one of your characters or like a bird without wings, man. And that'd be sweet.
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
Like a
Might be a little on the nose,
Yeah. Right.
But hey, man, right off the bat, I kind of want to know a lot more about you and how everything kind of started. So do you have any movies, TV shows, or pieces of pop culture that you loved as a kid?
Every single one of them, man. But like, okay, so I grew up in the 80s. So I feel like the 80s was like a very different time to now. I feel like there's like a lot of obviously independent creations, myself being one of them. TikTok, you get all these things, right? Where people can just go out and create. But I feel like a lot of the things that I grew up on, to include video games, right? Like I was in the 8-bit era. I was in the Atari era. Like I literally grew up with all that. So like, I don't want to say it took more imagination, but it took more imagination to get out of those products what we got out of them, right? Like Thundercats is an amazing looking cartoon, right? But if you go back and watch it for the story now, you know what I mean? Like, right? But on the other end, Robotech, and not Macross, but Robotech, right? Is like, I mean, it looks cool, but it's like, whatever. Because of how many things they had to cut and chop and whatever.
Right.
But it's like the story is dope. Like when Roy Fokker dies and these things that you had never seen in kind of cartoons before. So I feel like I was kind of, maybe not at the forefront, but at a really pivotal time for things like that. So cartoons were really, really great. Like people forget stuff like Pirates of Dark Water. Like that was a dope cartoon. Bionic Six, like all these things that we kind of like, they were just like, we just did them all the time, right? Like we just watched them. Saturday morning, you didn't leave the room until like 1 or 2 o'clock when Kung Fu Theater came on, right? And that was just to go make lunch so you come back and watch Kung Fu Theater.
Right.
So I feel like a lot of those things really influenced me. I love Hong Kong cinema. Like I said, I love Kung Fu flicks. I don't know a kid that's my age or was my age that after Saturday we didn't get back to school on Monday making the Kung Fu sounds like we were all having a battle at that point, right? Like, right. Like the slow, like dubbed audio, like we're doing it on our own voices. And, you know what I mean? Like, right. Obviously, spent time in actual arcades, right, where you like really had to put your quarter down. So Street Fighter is and that whole fighting genre, that kind of rolls out of again Hong Kong cinema and kung fu movies. Super important. A lot of us, and my affection for him is different now, but like a lot of us grew up on like Tarantino stuff. We all grew up on Spielberg. We all grew up on George Lucas. Like anything that we consider like pop culture now, I guess when we were going through it, it wasn't pop culture. It just was the way it was, right? Like it wasn't like a cliche thing to be like, oh man, I like Star Wars. It's like, well, everybody likes it, dude. It's dope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's funny to say pop culture now because, yeah, you're right. Like, who doesn't watch The Last of Us or who doesn't watch The Mandalorian now? It's like, it's just a part of the culture. It's weird to say that, yeah, it's pop culture, but, how could you not love it?
Right. I feel like the word pop, I mean, well, it started with music, right? Like, pop music wasn't a genre.
Right.
It was R&B. And then again, it got a lot of people started wanting to make that sound or wanting to recreate that sound. And you get a guy like Max Martin, who's like a Swedish producer. Dude's dope. I'm not going to, deny that, right? But you get all these different people that aren't usually associated with that genre. So instead of becoming a genre, now it's pop culture, right? Like it's just like comics, and it's just like all the like quote unquote nerd stuff now, right? Like it was nerd stuff. D&D was nerd stuff, and they still like people still say it, but at the same time, you got Stranger Things, and so now it's pop culture.
Would you say the same?
You got convinced.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, no.
Would you say the same for like anime now, as like that used to be a super niche thing that very few people used to watch, and now it's kind of hit a much broader element? Yeah. What are your thoughts and feelings towards anime or manga in general?
So I feel well. So one, I love both, right? But also, okay. So I think that. How do I say this? I think that it's always been like a big thing, but again, let's say like culturally, right? Like, so people of my culture, like black dudes, right? Like even the most hood black dude has been watching Dragon Ball Z since the first time it came on TV.
Right.
It just wasn't like, it didn't matter, right? Like you could go anywhere and talk about, Goku or Gohan, and everybody's going to talk about it, right? But it wasn't like, it wasn't acceptable. It wasn't a tool that you could get girls with.
Yeah.
That's what I think about anime and manga now, right? Right. It was we all knew it. It didn't matter, like you said, from the top to the bottom. Maybe like one or two jocks didn't know, right? Mm. But like for the most part, people knew. But you couldn't get girls with it. Now you can use it to get girls. So I think that's the real difference, because if you're talking about like the, quote unquote original audiences, they've always been there.
Yeah.
That audience has grown. But I think that it's grown due to like a few things. I think it's grown due to conventions, right? And it's grown due to people, I think, of our age just not caring anymore, right? Because you would only talk about it like with your boys, right? Like, or you would be somewhere like at somebody's house, blah, 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 whatever. Now it's like, I don't care. I'm just talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, look at Michael B. Jordan. Like the inspiration for Creed 3, he said on numerous occasions, like, I got that from manga, I got that from Naruto, I got that from Dragon Ball Z, and it's like, oh, okay, if you have a guy like that who could say, hey, I watch anime and I love it, and this cool new movie that you're watching is based off that, it's like, yeah, the lid's open on it now. Now everybody can talk about anime like it's a cool thing, and yeah.
Even if you think about him though too, right? Like think about, okay, because just that interview he just went through, where the girl, when he was in high school, the girl called him corny, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so he kind of brought
she's eating her words now.
Yeah, exactly. So think about that, right? So when he was in high school talking about anime or doing all this thing and liking what he liked, it was corny, right? But because he is who he is now, he hasn't changed at all.
Right.
What he likes hasn't changed. It's just people's perception of like, oh man, since I think that guy is cool because he did this other thing that was cool, maybe now this thing that he's always been into is cool as well, which I think is kind of a dope place to be.
Absolutely.
When we talk about influencers and influence and all that other stuff, I think it's kind of a cool thing to be in a place where it's like, nah, man, I could just like what I like and do what I do, and people are going to eventually think it's cool or not.
Right.
But who cares?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. We've been sticking to what we love, and now it's kind of accepted by the mainstream, so to speak. And it's like, yeah, but we've been loving this. You're just kind of catching up now. So yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So, is there a character, now let's talk about like the kind of the big two, if you will. Is there a character from Marvel or DC that you think deserves more screen time, or you would love to see get more screen time?
Ooh, I feel like that's kind of hard because they are doing a lot with a lot of characters, which is like, I think really, it's cool in some ways, but it also distances things in some ways. I'm a huge Batman fan. I actually love Superman. I hate the way he's written for the most part. Because all he does is just punch stuff. I actually love Zack Snyder's Superman, right? Like, because he was like morose and like everything sucked. And I would feel like that too. Like if you're like the most powerful dude ever, but you can't do anything really, but like kind of save people unknown, I'd be pissed too. Like everything would suck. I don't care.
Yeah.
So, oh man, if I think about a character who like, I wish, given my place in all these different things and in creating and doing comics and et cetera, I think that there are some and this becomes cliche for other people, like, oh, I want the diversity characters and I want characters of different, blah, blah, blah to get shine. But like, I really do though, right? Like, okay, so I want Static to be so well known that people know his name is Static and not Static Shock. Right. Like, I want small things like that. Like, I think that America Chavez is like a pretty dope character. So I liked seeing her on film.
Do you think she was done well?
Miles Morales.
Yeah.
I think she was done well contextually.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, if you're comparing the two, if you're like, oh, she's not like the comic, well, then duh. You know what I mean? Or she's not. Right. I think that for what was there as a building block, I think it was done well. And I think the movie was done pretty well overall. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So I think you have to, I think you have to, I don't know, man, you got to like compartmentalize some of this stuff. Like, sometimes to enjoy it, I think Miles Morales is a great dope character, right? So I definitely want to see him in more media. I can't wait till Across the Spider-Verse, man. Like, that's gonna be dope. Oh my God. But I also, even though Tom Holland's Spider-Man is really just Miles Morales, I still want to see Miles Morales, right? Like, because to me, that's a different movie. That's a movie with a Wu-Tang soundtrack. You know what I mean? Like, that's a movie where it's like, your soundtrack sounds more like Samurai Champloo than it does anything Marvel's ever done. Right. Like, I want to see that movie where it's got that real, like, authentic feel. I think they've done some amazing things with Shang-Chi. Because obviously he was just like a Bruce Lee clone in the comics, even though I love that. But I mean, long story short, okay, if my golden ticket, which they've kind of done in the comics right now, I love the fact that Iron Fist is now an Asian character.
About damn time.
And I wish they would have I wish they would have done that with the series. Like, so when the series came out, I was like, this is so easy. Like, just call him Danny Rand and he's Asian. And I had a friend who asked me and they were like, well, how? And I was like, bro, we took all the immigrants through Ellis Island. I was like, we've seen it in The Godfather where they just messed up his name. It should have been Danny Land, Lan. But they said Rand because they didn't understand, and now they're Asian Americans, like first generation. I was like, bro, this sounds like it writes itself.
I love that, man. I know. I mean, and we're both Japanese, but yeah, my grandma came from Japan. She went to San Francisco. They got put in internment camps, wrapped up all their stuff, blah, blah, blue, married somebody in Wyoming, and that's why my last name's Craig. You know what I mean? But like, I'm the most Japanese out of all my ethnicities. I'm the most Japanese, but my last name's Craig. So it's not that much of a stretch now. You know what I mean?
It's really, exactly. Like, open up your mind just slightly. And but I like stuff like that, right? I have a friend who was talking about like Shang-Chi, and he liked the movie, but he was like, man, I wish that wasn't the only form of martial arts they represent, right? Like. And he was like, I wish there were some different aesthetics. And I was like, man, I had to remind him, like, I was like, hey, man, just like Black Panther, like, this is the first one, bro. Like, you got to wait till that door kind of blows wide open. And then we're going to do all of that, right? Like, that's our kind of responsibility to do. But I love seeing that, right? Not that I want all these other characters to go away. I don't think they need to. I think they're strong on their own. Right. But like, I want to see some of the new stuff, and I want to be, engrossed in some of these other cultures, right? Like the next invasion I want to see of like a comic book genre, like I want to see man, like Asian and Pacific Islander like invasion, but like I want them to not be like the villains, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I want them to be like, oh man, we've messed with them enough. Now here's this warrior society, like, you know what I mean? Like something big and epic, almost like what, you know, the Namor kind of stuff. But you know what I mean? Like that kind of I think that visual is dope, bro. Like
absolutely. We can't agree with you more. I mean, we're both from Hawaii, we're both Asian. So it's like Drake's native Hawaiian. It's like, man, I don't know, Drake, you want to say something about that? Because
I definitely agree. Like, I remember being on like Wikipedia and Google trying to see if there was any like representation. I know like King Shark essentially in Anawe is supposedly supposed to be like a sort of form of a Polynesian. There's another guy called Silver Sword back in Marvel, just because that's a plant that grows only on the island of Hawaii. And so there's like a little bit of that, but not enough to really provoke. And then when Jason Momoa provided that in Aquaman, it kind of just was like, oh, representation, you know, to an extent in that situation was like epic, because you finally got to see that, aside from like things like Moana, et cetera, which is more of a vaster Polynesian representation. I would love to see that. When seeing the Namor situation in Wakanda Forever, I was like, wow, like this could be something that we could do, considering all the lore. So no, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So all that is, again, agree with you. I'm all for more Native Hawaiian heroes for it. So let's do it. All right. So let's see. My next thing was, we're kind of moving more into you being the author and the comic you created. But what are some comic heroes or real life heroes that you've drawn some of your creative inspiration from to bring into your books?
I always start off with like, so I started as a novelist. So the main character in my novel is a guy called Sir Kyle Hunter. He's like the Knight of the Sword. He's like this like badass, but like really not troubled necessarily. Not troubled. Yeah, no, he's a really troubled guy, right? Like you got past, he's had to do things that he didn't want to do, you know, on and on and on, right? And it's like his gilded brothers. So my novels were inspired obviously by my friendships with my brother, my cousins, you know, like the guys I grew up with. And it's like a microcosm of that. But I wouldn't have Kyle Hunter without one, Rick Hunter from Robotech, right? Because I love the last name Hunter. And then two, Mad Mardigan, man, from Willow. Like that was
wow.
Like that's my guy, man. I watched Willow a million times.
Damn, nice. Well, I mean, you know, sorry about the show, but
right, I feel like that too, man. Dude, I got through like I didn't even finish the show. I think I got 3 episodes in, man, 4 maybe, and it was just hard.
Man, I
difficult.
tried. Yeah. We were trying to talk about the show. I got a couple episodes in. And I'm like, guys, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think this is for me.
Trailer.
Yeah. But
so I remember screaming at the screen. I think it was like episode 1 when a couple things are happening, and then I'm screaming, that's not a Laura Dannon. Tell me she's not going to be a Laura Dannon. And then it did, and I was like, I hate this. I hate this show so much.
No, definitely. I'm sure you as a writer, seeing like the opportunities or the directions they could have gone, you're like, what? But that's cool. Okay, so you take that character and you bring it into your Hunter. What else kind of goes into it? Because sorry, I feel like we deterred a little bit too much from that.
No, so that was one of them. I try to take a lot of real life, right? Because I think those are the best stories. So again, if we're talking about my novel stuff, that's like me and my friends, my brothers, if we were in a fantasy realm. When we come to the comics and stuff, if we're talking about Justice, which is the flagship comic for Wingless Comics, there's a lot of Spawn in there. There's a lot of Frank Miller in there. There's a lot of Mark Wade in there.
Okay. So I've read the first couple issues. I read Justice. What else did I read? I read Her. I read one other comic. It's kind of escaping the name right now. But yeah, I felt like there was some Spawn in there. I felt like there was some Blade, like these troubled heroes who you want to root for, but maybe their essence or their origin comes from maybe a darker place, but there's good in them, and through that darkness there's also power, and there's the ability to help people. So all right, cool. I felt like those inspirations were there, but it's nice to hear coming from you that those are things that you thought about in building those characters.
Again, man, I think somebody my age, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not old, but like I grew up with The Dark Knight Returns, right? Like that was for maybe it was only 5 years, right? But there was a span of time where that was the book, right? Like it had just changed the way people perceive things. Obviously, Alan Moore, I'm not even trying to compare, but like Alan Moore, right? He's a genius in terms of how he puts things together, whether or not you like all of his stuff, which is the same for Frank Miller, right? How he put together Watchmen was amazing. How he put together the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was amazing. Kid Miracle Man, you know what I mean? Miracle Man and all that stuff. Neil Gaiman as well. Like there are just a ton, and I've been fortunate enough to like run into a couple of them. Myself and Mark Wade have had a couple exchanges online, like where he really like he inboxed me one time, man, and I screenshotted that and I sent it to everybody I knew. Like, Mark Wade, you know what I mean? And it was really cool. Because Kingdom Come was an epic comic for me. You know, Alex Ross. Just some of those storytelling mechanics go into everything I do.
Right.
I like the noir detective style, Sam Spade. You know, it was a dark, cold night when I met him. You know what I mean? I like that. That thing is kind of dope. So Justice is a character who is written in that way of like, while all these things are happening, his mind is still going and thinking of like what the subtext to the situation is and kind of showing his view on it. So, that was really important.
Mm-hmm.
Look, a lot of writers won't say it, and maybe a lot of creators won't say it, man. WWE and even WWF, right? I grew up in the Attitude Era, bro. I watched that stuff all the time, right? Soap operas, man. They were. I was just watching a thing the other day, man, where Kane, the first appearance of Kane, where he, he's like the Undertaker is this unbeatable guy, and he gets scared. Like I love those moments, right? And so I take a lot of that kind of pageantry into what I do, right? I'm writing superheroes. So what's the closest thing we have to superheroes? Wrestlers, right? Like they're these larger than life guys, these larger than life characters that are throwing each other around and breaking steel cages and blah blah blah, right? So if I'm writing a comic book where a dude can pull metal off of his arm and create a weapon out of it, like, yeah, okay, we're gonna go larger than life, and he's gonna have some crazy catchphrases, and I'm going to take inspiration from all of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, I love that character too, who has Excalibur tied to his arm. Nightfall, is it? Caliburn.
No, Caliburn. He's Caliburn.
That's right. Yeah, but I love it. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Long-term storytelling and larger than life characters. I mean, the WWE wrestling has been doing it so damn well for so long, and they keep building on the drama. It's great. I could feel that. Yeah, Drake, did you have anything?
No, I'm just kind of in what you're saying, and then having read your graphic novels, like it definitely shows the amount of your knowledge and your passion driven into even the first few pages. You can see all of the remnants of all the things that influence you moving forward. So it's just nice to put the thought to the picture.
I appreciate that. I guess technically classically trained, you know what I mean? Like my degree is in creative writing. And so sometimes what I see, even in mainstream stuff, is like, we want to get stories out, but like, we don't fully develop them, right? Yeah. Like, we jump from one piece to the next. And you're like, well, what happened? John Byrne was really good at like doing that, but doing that with like a purpose. He would like leave this story piece hanging. You're like, man, what happened when Bishop was talking about the last X-Man or whatever, and you don't see it, and then like 4 years later, right, like somebody else can pick it up, and they're like, oh, hey, we got this storyline with Onslaught here, and so now we're going to go back to that panel you did, what I mean, 5 years ago or whatever. And I love those kinds of things, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I feel like indie comics is a little bit more finite sometimes, only in that most indie comics only put out like a comic a year. Right. So I can't plan on a 200 comic run, right? I'm not gonna be 200 years old. So I've got to plan on like runs that make sense. Yeah. And so that's something I've really tried to do. And for Justice, at least, Justice is a black-winged black man with, locks, and he's an angel, blah, 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 right? So you got to kind of hit hard with that, like quickly too, right? Because one, I can't let it steer too far into someone thinks this is a religious comic book that's trying to convert people to Christianity, or the opposite of that, and I'm trying to make everybody devils or whatever. I've got to really get in there and tell a story that's like engaging, and does a bunch of different things very quickly, so that I can keep my audience and show them something new. I can base stories on what I call Christian mythology, right? Like, so it's not necessarily a truth or not, it's the true thing for this universe, and a mythology just like Greek mythology or Norse or anything else. Yeah,
absolutely. I gotta tell you, man, I was reading through Justice 1, and I'm like, man, this world is so cool. It's so, there's these monsters, but there is some religious mythology going on here. And as soon as issue 1 was done, I was like, damn it, do I have issue 2? I was like, shit, where's issue 2? I got to finish this up. So it did hook me right away. I feel like it's captivating. And it feels like a truly built out, unique world that I'm like, man, okay, what's this about? Where is this character getting his story? Again, Caliburn. I thought that was so interesting, man. Having Excalibur grafted to his arm. It's like we've seen the Winter Soldier, but having this mythology context to why he has the metal arm and the powers associated with it. I thought that was so dope, man. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, I really like the idea of your creations coming to life, and they're so powerful that your audience is captivated by it, and then will hopefully eventually not only inspire them, but then also maybe they'll even try to carry on that mantle because it was affecting them so positively. They want to continue to do that in the future. I think that's something that creators maybe unintentionally do, especially ones obviously that hit super hard. The first one that comes to mind is like J.R.R. Tolkien, just that whole world that J.R.R. Tolkien created and how it affected other people, and how we're still trying to make that keep going, even though it's been, years since it's been in the limelight, I would say.
Yeah. I'm a huge Tolkien legendarium guy, so I'm all about that, right? Like, and so one of the big things for me is, and actually, so I built some of Wingless Comics in our universe off of Tolkien's idea. So there, if you guys don't know, or the audience doesn't know, there's a book called The Silmarillion.
Oh, yeah.
And The Silmarillion is basically like the lore. It's like the backstory and, how the world was built and how the universe and blah, 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 all these things. Man, I love the way he did that so very much that when I started building out Wingless Comics by myself, even before I took on, Malachi, who's one of the writers, the writer of her, creator of her, and Brett with Immortalis. I set it up like that, like, okay, hey, again, apart from religion, right? How is the setup of this cosmos? Okay, we got one guy up here who's like the top, right? Whatever they are, that being. And then the next layer, and then the next layer, and then the next layer. And how do all these layers like interact and weave in and out of each other? And so that was really important, because I think that especially if you're doing a shared universe as an independent creator, it's very important to keep stock of what's happening.
Right.
Because you can get lost very easily. Every creator you're ever going to meet is, I got 50 characters and I could do 20 comic books tomorrow. Like, yeah, but if it doesn't make sense,
right? Like, how are you going to intersect them? How are you going to make the stories work and build to a greater story and all that? Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so even when I did Nightfall, and so people love Caliburn, right? Like, they love his look, they love how he does his thing, and that was not my intention. He was a foil for me when I originally started for Justice. I was like, okay, Justice is like dark Batman with powers, right? And then I was like, oh, I need Superman, right? Like, I need his foil. I need like lighthearted guy who's not invulnerable. And so that's the way he originally, that was my idea, but then he took off so well, and people connect with him so well, that I had to expand what he does.
Yeah.
Then I go into writing Nightfall, and Nightfall I wrote, the same year that I wrote Justice #1, and I'm like, hey, we're launching a crossover, bro. Second book out. We are just diving right in there, right? But I had to do it in a way to where the world felt real, right? Like, people didn't feel like they were missing stuff, even if they don't know the characters. The introduction's got to be punchy, and that only comes from knowing what the backstory is, knowing, okay, this person and this person met in the past, and they're going to talk to each other like they met in the past, right? And they're going to give little clues like they already know each other. And the ones who don't know each other don't. Okay, but we're gonna do the same thing that every time I was on a football team or whatever else, there was always a guy that everybody ended up following, right? Like, he was the guy.
Yeah.
And whether or not you wanted him to be the guy, sometimes he was the guy, and this is what you do. And so you set up those pieces. That's just the normal way things go. But again, as creators, a lot of time we don't take the time to do that. Whereas somebody like Tolkien did, like, he took the time to like go through thousands of years of history so that it all made sense. And so I tried to model at least a piece of what I do after that.
That's incredible, man. That's amazing. And it makes sense why this world is getting built out the way it is, so connected, so flushed out. I love that, man. It's killer. I think, with that being said, which brings us to kind of our next question, let's say somebody wants to go pick up your books right now. Do they have to start at Justice #1? Like, where do you recommend a new reader start with your books?
I always recommend Justice #1 because he's my favorite.
Right. Okay. Fair.
But honestly, where we're at as far as how the world itself is maturing and how our issues are maturing, you can actually pick up anywhere and kind of grab and go.
Right.
Immortalis is our I guess earliest series in terms of chronology.
Oh, okay.
Like our own Wingless timeline.
Okay,
right?
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. So Immortalis sets the stage for everything that you see in Justice and in her and everything else. So briefly, Immortalis is basically the story of the fall of the last Roman outpost, which is in Constantinople. And when it's a 4 issue miniseries, and so when that series ends and that place falls, which is actually historically accurate, when Constantinople falls, it kind of opens the floodgates for like evil and darkness to kind of take dominion, right? Like it shifts the balance.
Right.
It's no longer yin and yang, right? Like the balance, it's the emperor just took over, right? Like now the dark side has risen to power, right? And so that's what Immortalis kind of allows to happen, for lack of better words.
I love that.
And then we come into Justice and Caliburn and Her, which are kind of running at about the same time, early on. And again, those are all introductory books without them being origin books.
Right. Because we were introduced to
like
the character, but you're kind of learning how they got their powers and who they are. You're learning the origin as you go through the stories with these characters, right? And that's cool. Because I mean, I've said this numerous times on the show. I'm not always a fan of origin stories. I
hate origin stories now.
They always feel the same to me, right? What do you think? Yeah. Why? I'm curious. Sorry, cut you off right there.
No. Origin stories are just origins. I'm a huge fan of Hong Kong cinema. I love when I can put on a Donnie Yen movie and he's kicking somebody in the face for the first 45 minutes. And then we get this 15-minute flashback of like, oh, hey, this is why I had to kick all these people in the face. And then we go back to it, right? Like I don't like starting. There's a difference between a slow burn and a slow movie or a slow story. I think it's kind of cliche or maybe even hackneyed sometimes. And that's no disrespect to any professional writer. I just mean the storytelling mechanic is that way, of where it's like, we've seen it in the 70s and the 50s and the 40s and everywhere else. Like Peter got bit by a spider and now he's spider. Like, bro, just, get into it.
We do not need to see how Spider-Man or Peter Parker became Spider-Man over and over and over again.
Yeah. So, I think that there are some the new Blue Beetle. His name escapes me right now.
Dang it! What is it? Why can I only think of what the something Reyes? No, am I thinking of Robbie Reyes, the Ghost Rider?
Yeah.
Why can I not?
Jamie Reyes.
It is Jamie Reyes. All right.
Okay.
Cool.
So I kind of like what they did with him. Is like, again, you were in the end of like the other. Like towards the, what I mean? Like Ted Kord has died now. There's some things happening. And like Jamie Reyes like runs afoul of the Scarab. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's like, if you're doing an origin, it's like something that makes story sense. Like you're not, when we meet each other on the street, I don't get your origin story.
Right.
What I see is what you got right there. We're going to talk. We're going to do some other stuff and blah, blah, blah. And then maybe I find out your origin story later.
As like a writer, sorry to cut you off, but as a writer, a lot of especially creative writing, showing, not telling, right? And so when you're doing character work and you have this whole big like exposition of like, this is the backstory, it really kind of takes away from the nuance of that character, which every character has so much nuance, right?
Yeah, and I also think that that's a huge problem in general in storytelling now. And again, I'm not like the main authority on this stuff, but how many times do you go into a movie and every 17-year-old kid is written like every other 17-year-old kid? Right? They're like, they got moxie, but they say they all the same lines or whatever else, or every Black character is written the same way. Every Hawaiian character is written, you know what I mean? Like and so it's like, well, all of it's telling and not showing, right? Like you're not showing that. I hate in movies where you have like a female protagonist, right? And she's got to like punch somebody and then say something cool, which is like the old Arnold Schwarzenegger style of like, one-liners, but it's to prove she's a badass, right? Dude, I just saw Charlize Theron kick the dude down the stairs. You don't have to tell me she's a badass. I saw it. Like I watched it. Like, you know what I mean? And so I feel like you said, like it takes you kind of out of it and it takes the nuance away and it just makes it like a less engaging piece,
right?
As opposed to like, man, we're just in there and we're going through.
It takes you out of the reality that they're building for sure. I appreciate that you recognize it and that you're not writing your characters like that, because it doesn't feel like that at all. So okay, perfect. We know where to start now with your books. I want to take you back because you were an amazing panelist for Black Comics Day. You were day one, and I'm so happy I sat in on it. And man, just what you were saying and your take on some of these buzzwords right now that's going around media and everything. I just kind of wanted to see if you could refresh and chat about it again. But I think somebody had asked the question, how do you feel about the terms social justice warrior and woke?
So I said a couple things there, and I don't know if I'll reiterate it, but my feelings are still the same, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, again, I'm not sure if you guys are aware or even the audience, right? The stuff that's going on with Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's a huge banking thing, right? So there's one thing here. The government can bail out a bank, right? Because a bank is too big to fail. But we are at the Supreme Court arguing if people deserve 10K in student loan forgiveness. Right. Yeah. Like, and we're 3 years down the line. What that tells me is like, the student loans that people are supposed to repay, like, we don't really need them economically. Like, let's be real. Like, no one needs the money. There's not a company out there that, like, it's 3 years down, bro. They just haven't been eating bologna sandwiches for 3 days. Right? I mean, 3 years. Yeah. So I say all of that to say that we have a lot of things, because one of the things that was on Fox News that I happened to see was that, Tucker Carlson and some other people were saying that Silicon Valley Bank failed because of diversity, right? Like, wow. I think they've got like a total of 4 women on their board. They said 1 LGBTQ person, 1 Black person, and there was 1 other category that they said, right? And this is like out of like 24 people or some shit like that.
So for like $1 billion bank, those 3 people are the reason it failed?
Yeah. They were more focused on diversity than they were banking, which, okay, right? So all of this wraps up because they're like, well, the woke policies are what's doing it. So one of the things about woke, and one of the things I said then is, like everywhere else, I'll challenge people to define it, right? And so DeSantis defined it as like having issues or taking issue with the systemic problems in America. And like, if that makes you woke, like, what? Like that, how is that a bad thing? Like, where do we take it to where it's like, oh man, I hate this now because how dare we say there's systemic problems in America, right? That's an insane thought, because there are systemic problems in everything.
Exactly.
Right? It's man-made.
That's kind of what I was going to say. Yeah. I mean, there's systemic problems, not just in America, but I mean, we should know that they are there because we are in America, but in any type of system across the world, in any country, there's certain systems that were set up that are antiquated or don't work anymore. Why can't we just try to recognize it at least, and then we go from there?
Right. If you told George Washington what a computer was, he'd be like, a what?
Right.
Like, you're going to get burned at the stake, you witch. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the fact that we're like, the forefathers thought we should have done this and that, and it's like, bro, that was 200 years ago. Yeah. Like, and 200 years ago, and technologically, like light years ago. Right. So that's one thing that's it sticks in my craw, right? Because I also, again, woke, the word woke or the term or whatever comes from Black culture. Not obviously, we did not create the word woke, right? But the word in context comes from a Black cultural thing where it was like, stay woke. One, it was a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, and whereas Black Americans do not have a national language that is different from English. We have colloquial phrases that our culture understands, just like every other culture and every other culture that has their own language.
Like Hawaii, right? Like people in Hawaii, we speak Pidgin. I mean, there's the language of Hawaiian, but there's also like we speak Pidgin. Like, what's up, brother? How you doing? It's like our own thing in a way, but we understand each other, and it's not typical American English. Exactly.
We talk about nuance. There's so much nuance in a cultural language, right? Yeah. Even if it's based on a national language, a cultural language has so much more nuance, right? Again, even if we're talking now, I could say, how are you? Or you good, right? You good? In 4 or 5 different ways. And all of them mean, like, one of them means we're about to fight. The other one means I'm really checking on you. The other one means like, hey man, like, are you about to die? You know what I mean? Like, again, so you get like a lot of nuance. So when we talk about something like woke, that was a phrase that had cultural significance and cultural nuance. And it's been homogenized and just strangled of all of that and become this blanket term for anything that has to do with diversity, ethnicity, women, other cultures, anything that's not cis het white men is woke, right? And that's a disservice to the term. That's a disservice to the people that it quote unquote represents. It's a disservice to all of that, right? Because again, it puts forth the notion that's been the notion for hundreds of years now that cishet white men are the standard for everything. Intelligence, style, banking, right? And so anytime you go off the path of that, now you're being woke, right? I can't just be, if a white male writes a comic book that stars a white male, that's just a comic book.
Right.
If I write a black male, I write a comic book that stars a black male, now I'm doing a woke comic book. Just by the sheer merits of it. And that is, again, that's nonsense, right? It's nonsense. And it's nonsense for it to be a pejorative term.
Right. And it just seems like such a double standard. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. And then when, again, social justice warrior, even that to be, I can't wrap my mind around some of these things, because it's like, okay, society, we all like society. We're all part of it. Justice, we all want justice, right? And somebody who goes to war for it. Okay, how is that a bad thing? But people turn it around and say, oh, you're a social justice warrior.
Right. And they say it in that tone, like, like how are you saying? You're right. When you break it down in the individual words, all of those seem to be a good thing for society. And then you turn around and you're using it like it's a negative thing. You're like, I want, social justice, or like basically equality for everybody. Now that's a negative thing. How we doing this?
Yeah, it's interesting how they, in general, words have power and meaning, as be it for the creative writing individual in you, Brian, and then also how words as a language, we use it to kind of dictate a lot of the different things, how we convey emotions, how we explain things, how we pass on traditions, et cetera, and to kind of make a word not redundant in a way, but so blasé that it no longer has a meaning.
Yeah, like stripped away from the meanings.
It's very, it hurts. It hurts.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, again, I see Halle Bailey being Ariel, right? And I'm a grown man. I was not clamoring to go see the movie. I was not clamoring to go see the movie, right? But I got my nieces. I got my sister. I'm a mother. I got all these people that see themselves in that, right? And they're like, oh man, this is dope, right? Like, because they know the original too.
Right.
And they love that one too. And so to see themselves in this new one, and you get people like, well, go woke and go broke. And you're like, wait. So our very skin tones, our very essence, our very culture is a political statement, right? And we know that when we step out the house. Yeah. We know, all of us here on this panel know, there are certain things that we can do in society and certain things we probably shouldn't, because the consequences for us might be worse, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So we're aware of that. But then to have to be constantly reminded of that in normal situations, again, it's pretty insane that we have to endure that part of it. Like, again, why isn't Danny Rand Danny Land, bro? Like, why? Right. Because if they had done it, somebody had been like, oh, here they go, going woke. And you're like, but before that, it was just a theft, and it was it's insane. It shouldn't have been the way it was originally.
Right.
But that's the society it's crazy that people we live in a current society, and people want to apply current society rules in certain times when it's beneficial to them.
Oh, yeah.
But when it's not beneficial, they want to, apply old society rules. When Doctor Strange, when they called him like the Asiatic man of sorcery, which is in Marvel comics, right? Like,
or it's like Oriental man or whatever. You're like, what? Like, Oriental? We're not decorations.
Right. So when that happens, right, then they're like, oh, well, that was the old days. We don't do that anymore. And when you tell them, okay, well, cool, we'll update it, right? And it should be this and this, because this would be the cultural way to do it. Oh, don't go woke now. Don't, you know what I mean? Like, wait, so are we culturally in society here, or are we there?
It's funny. I have this is probably like a terrible example, because you said everything so eloquently and thoughtful, but it's like when they found out that, dinosaurs had feathers like the raptors, they added them in the new Jurassic Park. But before, they were just trying to do the best they can. But you weren't like, oh, they're going woke with the raptors. You're like, no, we found out more information about them. And that's what they actually look like. So we updated it for the content.
Yeah.
But
anything to push away from the current narrative for sure. I mean, you can even see that with historical finds and or with new findings of things that we thought about humanity as a whole. So it's interesting how they just want to continue to push this continual narrative that doesn't necessarily serve anybody other than themselves. So
the one thing, and I don't know, you can agree or disagree, Brian, but the one thing I could say is that I feel like there is now room for more varied voices of different cultures to be able to find a platform now. You know, whether it's in comics or it's in social media or podcasts like what we're doing. You know, I don't know many podcasters who are, you know, Asian and Hawaiian and who get together to chat about the things that we call pop culture. And I think we did a good job of kind of defining what that is now. But, you know, I don't know. I feel like at least we're allowed the space. Now, is it acceptable everywhere? I don't know. But I think I can appreciate now that we have a little bit more room to tell our stories. I don't know. Do you feel the same way or yeah?
The only thing I would say, especially with you, right? Like, as I said on this podcast, I wouldn't say that no one allowed you to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I mean that from a stance of like power, right? You guys, the opportunity was there. I talk about the proliferation of the internet and technology and all these things, right? But you guys had to be the ones to say like, no, we're going to do this, right? Yeah. And so I think that a lot of times we take that, and I know I've done it too, where we take that as like someone is, you know what I mean? Like, oh, now I'm allowed space in here, right? Because even in a historical context, we did have to be allowed space. We weren't allowed to go into certain neighborhoods, right. You know, our parents, you know what I mean? And we weren't allowed to sit at certain tables and on and on and on. And I think that now you have a generation of people who are smarter, who have seen things change, who feel that they want the things to change like yourselves. And I think that there are multiple platforms for that and multiple ways to do it. But I also think that we are the ones who found those multiple ways. It's very, very rare that it was like gifted to, you know, you. Yeah. You maybe saw somebody else podcast and you're like, I want to do it.
That's exactly.
So now I can figure out a way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And same with comics, right? Like I want to do comics since I was a kid, but growing up before the internet, what am I gonna do? Write into Marvel? And I'm not a Wachowski, right? They don't care about me writing in and saying, hey, I want to do a comic. Right. So I didn't know what to do until I saw someone else do it. And I saw, you know, the pieces now. And so now you can see the inner working. So I feel like, again, from a stance of power, people like yourself have taken that and seen that, one, there's always been enough room for everybody to do what they want to do. But now you're able to take hold of it. Now you're able to control that yourself as opposed to someone telling you, no, you can't do it. Because even if somebody did tomorrow, hey, you can't do a podcast. That's not going to stop your podcast, right? Like you can do it. There's nothing they can do to stop you. And I think that's the difference. I think taking that piece of power back. And I think also that's what scares people who are in power.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because their value and their virtue comes from the power that they've gained. So once they start losing that, they start to doubt themselves. It's just like anything else. Like a billionaire is not going to be scared of losing $100,000, right? Because who cares? But if they're hemorrhaging money over and over and
hundreds
over time,
of millions
they start
of dollars.
To get, that scares them because that's where their value comes from. As opposed to someone like yourself, your value is internal and you're just showing that to the world. You know what I mean? Like you guys are doing what you do. And you know what I mean? Like there's a huge paradigm shift. And I think that scares people.
Yeah, absolutely. That was way too kind, by the way. If you want to come out and talk about me in front of anybody else, like you're there. I don't know what your fee is. We'll figure it out. But please come out and introduce me like that always because I feel real special now.
No,
that was beautiful and well said. And I agree with you. I mean, I definitely agree with that. And I'm happy that we both have our platforms to try to, gain some of that power for ourselves. So I think that's awesome. Last thing. Hey, you know what? We were kind of talking about your comic books and we've talked about pop culture. We've talked about your influence. Let's fan cast some of your characters. Now, a big network's coming to you or big movie studios coming to you and saying, hey, we want to make the Justice show. Who plays Justice? Who plays her? Who plays Nightfall? Who plays dang, I keep forgetting that. Caliburn, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I've actually done it a couple times, like on Instagram and stuff, just because I don't have anything better to do sometimes. It's also pretty cool.
But yeah.
So Justice, I would like gentleman, Yahya Abdul.
Ooh.
I forget his last name though, but he was in Watchmen.
So good. And
right. He's got that like larger stature. He's got a kind of
like John Jones,
a booming kind of voice.
Yeah, but so confident, so cool, calm and collected. Like, just the way he says things is so smooth. Yeah. Oh, I like that. For Justice.
For Caliburn, I would like Omari Hardwick.
Okay.
From Ghost, from Power.
Oh, okay.
Power? Yeah, who plays Ghost, right? So he actually looks not on purpose, but him and Caliburn look super similar.
Right.
So I think he would be great, and it would be cool to see him do something like a little bit different because he's played like a lot of hard-boiled characters in recent years. So to see him as somebody kind of like snarky and kind of sarcastic. Also, the physical action, I would love to see that. I forget her name, but the lady who played Starfire in Teen Titans.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, she's so good in it.
Jinx or Lex, or?
I would love her to be her.
Okay.
No, you're talking about actual Starfire for her, right?
Yeah.
Why can't I think of her name? I love that actress.
Yeah.
I'll find it.
Yeah, okay, Drake's on it. But yeah, she's so good. She's one of the highlights of that Titan show.
Right. Okay, so I like season 1 was it. Season 2 was pretty dope.
They didn't know what they were doing. They were figuring it out.
Yeah. I thought season 2 caught like a little bit of a stride. Yeah. Season 3 was horrible to me. I got tired of Jason Todd, man, and it lost me in season 3.
Got it.
He cried a little bit too much for me.
Well, it sometimes it's like you want a little bit mystery to the villain, especially Red Hood. Like you don't want to know, like us comic fans, we know who's behind the hood, but sometimes it's like nicer to have that mystery. I think that's one thing that would have been cool if they tapped into. Yeah. Also,
they had like a lot of conversations just in like regular alleys.
Right.
And I was like, people can hear you, bro.
Yeah.
Echoes. Being Batman without Batman, I was like, dude, that's respect.
Right.
That's funny.
No doubt.
Oh, her name is Anna Diop.
Anna Diop.
Oh, right. I love her.
Yeah, she's in a new movie too that looks amazing.
Yeah, it's this says that Yahya Abdul Mateen II is on Vulture is saying that he has the potential to play Wonder Man.
I think that's confirmed.
Is that confirmed?
Yeah, that's
cool.
confirmed. Yeah, that was confirmed.
So that's great. I mean, I'm super excited to see him in that role. That's a great fan cast.
Who'd you cast as Prime?
Prime is
nice, good deep cut, Drake, right there.
Right. Because there are some older actors I would love to see do it. Like, okay, so if Lawrence Fishburne could remember that he did Marvel movies, comic movies, I'd say Lawrence Fishburne, right? Yeah. But like, he just came out and was like, I don't know.
He's like, I'm fine to just be a fan. I don't need to be in that universe. They're like, you were in Ant-Man 2, man.
Right. You remember, gosh, who else?
Yeah,
he would honestly be my top pick right now. Or because he can do no wrong, even though I feel like he's a little young in actuality. Like, I'd put Jonathan Majors.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with Jonathan Majors.
In a second, right? Like, Jonathan
Majors can't miss right now.
Dude, did you guys see Creed 3?
Yeah. We just came out with an episode not too long ago talking about it. It was incredible.
I have to go back and check the episode. I will say, like, okay, one, being a guy from California, Southern California, Long Beach and blah, 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 like all of that stuff, and seeing all this stuff in, the Crenshaw district. And I just, man, it hit for me, man. I won't lie, man. Just that first 10 minutes he's on screen, even I was already a fan when you're looking at like Lovecraft Country and some other things. But I became such a larger fan with Creed 3.
Absolutely. That guy has so much range. I mean, we've seen him play villains for these last couple of movies, and they're all different. I mean, all the variants of Kang are different. The Kree character is different. Dame, and then how badass was it at the final fight in Dodger Stadium? I loved that. I was like, that is fire. That was so cool. That was such a good choice.
Yeah, it was. And I also like, from a writing and story perspective, I love the fact that the climax wasn't the fight.
Right.
I love that the climax was that conversation they had at the end.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
And really just going back and being like, man, it's not your fault, man. We was kids.
Right.
Like I said, man, for me, it just on every level,
Mhm.
it hit, and neither one of them. Okay, so he was an antagonist, of course,
Right.
but he wasn't a villain,
True.
right? Like if we can look up and be like, hey, Killmonger was right,
Mhm.
then you got to be able to say like, yo, Dame had a point.
He had a point.
Now the
about
way
his
he got
situation.
to everything, not necessarily the best,
Right. Yeah.
right? But was he a villain? Was he villainous? Because like, look how he treated
The wife. Yeah. I know what you're
right.
talking- Yeah, why can't I think of anybody's
exactly.
name today though? Like
Tessa Thompson.
Yeah, Tessa Thompson.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm like, I know everybody's name that we've been saying. And yeah, I cannot find it today. Yeah. I didn't even smoke weed.
So right. Yeah, so I just man, like I said, I don't think he can do any wrong. I think he's done such an amazing job. And again, the characters were so nuanced and there was so much to tell about what was happening. There was so much to tell about the story that we're in the middle of.
Mhm.
I love that kind of storytelling.
Absolutely.
I saw Creed like 3 times.
Nice.
So,
Yeah.
Three times makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I was on Google's looking up the Google's things, and one of the first thing that popped up just in the news is that John Wick 1 through 4 actor Lance Reddick, who played Sharon, the hotel manager, has passed away.
Oh man.
Yeah,
man, at 60,
Yeah.
right?
What?
Bro, that's
yeah,
so
dude,
young.
60 is
Oh,
super
yeah.
young,
That's
especially
so
now
young.
when you can live to like 90
Right.
something now.
There's people
Right,
living to
right.
120
Like, oh
or
my
whatever,
gosh.
like
What?
supposedly you're gonna be born. So yeah. But anyways, let's end on some high notes here.
sorry.
Right, like-
Yeah. Thanks for bumming us out, Drake.
Yeah, my bad.
Tight. Love that you did that. But hey, it's been a pleasure, Brian. Where can everybody find you? How can they support your work? Yeah, all that.
We are currently on a couple different platforms. We are on globalcomics.com. You can get the majority of our issues there, obviously digitally. We are transitioning to go to Indie Planet as well. So you can get the issues physically, as well as Comics Wellspring to get the issues physically. We have a number of the issues also on our website, www.winglessent.com. We are on Facebook, it's Wingless Comics. We are on Instagram as Wingless Comics. We are on Twitter as Wingless Entertainment. Basically, if you put in Wingless, you're going to find me and you're going to find us. And we will be back on Kickstarter in May 18th. We are going to launch. I always launch on my birthday or the week of my birthday. And we're going to have Justice issue 4. So that's going to end up his first story arc called Justice the Fall 1 through 4. We'll have the trades there. We'll have everything good to go. You can get our whole catalog again coming in May.
Ooh, can't wait for that. Happy birthday to you early, by the way. But yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you.
Yeah, I'm going to be in line to pick that up too as well. So that's amazing. Everybody, yeah, go out there, go follow these guys, go check them out. Wingless Comics and Wingless Entertainment on social media and stuff. We're already following you and love all the work you're doing. Definitely, I mean, really, really appreciate you coming on today and just kind of opening my mind to things that, I mean, they were there, but just putting it in a way that I can't verbalize. And I think the way you're able to say it is amazing, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for telling your story.
I appreciate you. Thank you for letting me come in and talk to you guys. And man, I really enjoy the show. I enjoy what I've seen. I got to catch up on that Creed episode.
Oh yeah. We also have Chris Rock's
again,
Selective Outrage on there too. So if you haven't seen it, we're gonna sell you on it, man. That was amazing.
I saw a clip, man, and I was like, oh man, I may have to inbox this guy. Have to talk. Yeah, I actually saw a clip on IG last night, as a matter of fact.
Oh, it's good. He crushed it. Yeah, I mean, goddamn, so good. But again, hey, thank you so much. We asked all our guests to say this at the end. You cannot say it. You could spin it however you want to say it. But can you just say your goodbyes and just say thanks for sticking it with us?
All right. You know what? Like I said, you can catch Wingless Comics everywhere. The internet proliferates, as I say. And thanks for sticking it in with us.
Yeah, there you go. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thanks.
Peace.
The Joystick Show.
If you've enjoyed what you've been listening to, we'd really appreciate a follow, subscribe, and a review. Just how we like chatting with our friends, please share this with yours. Feel free to join the squad and follow us at JoyStickShow Joystick Show on Twitter and Instagram, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And if you feel like submitting topics or questions to be discussed on future episodes, you can email us at joystick.show@gmail.com. As always, thank you, peace out, and make it a great rest of your week.